I used an Oura Ring for a year and I wanted to share my thoughts on the Oura Ring with you. So back in my early 20s, I was really into fitness. So I am an early adapter of wearables. I started off with a body bug, which was basically like a Fitbit that stuck on your arm with a little wrap that measured everything from like your calories burned to your heart rate, and then I transitioned to a Fitbit. I've long since not used Fitbits or wearables for a very long time, but after being introduced to Oura Rings from my friends, I thought, hell, I'll give this a go, I'll try it out. So I got the Gen 3 Oura Ring after my friends had recommended it to me. I was really into the idea of tracking my ovulation with the ring. I am somebody who practices the fertility awareness method and have been doing that for almost close to 10 years. One of the pieces to the fertility awareness method is tracking your body temperature daily before you get out of bed. And I just have found a really hard time with tracking my body temperature with a typical thermometer. So I was really intrigued to use the Oura Ring to see how accurate it was at tracking my temperature so I could track my ovulation. Plus, I just love motivation for being active. I am somebody who's very motivated by numbers. To have an Oura Ring motivate me to continue to remain active, not sit on my ass all day, was something that really inspired me to get the ring. And I thought it could just help my overall health in general. So I decided to go all in and buy one not only for myself, but for my husband as well. What I learned from the Oura Ring were quite a few things. The first thing that I learned was through the different modules of readiness, sleep, and activity. Through the sleep module, I learned that I tossed and turned a lot. So I typically get really incredible sleep, but I toss and turn. And no matter what I did, I could never get the restfulness, which measures how much you toss and turn or get up out of bed. I could never get that score to like 100, which would have meant perfect. But despite having a low restfulness because of my tossing and turning, I still managed to have an overall really great sleep score, which averaged around 95. And I also learned that sometimes my partner and I take MDMA as couples therapy, and I learned through doing that can make my sleep score tank. Going to festivals makes my sleep score tank. Staying up late makes it tank, as well as watching a blue screen right before bed. And I don't really drink, but occasionally I would have some drinks later in the evening, maybe like 1 or 2, and that was enough to mess up my sleep score. So that motivated me to change my behavior around drinking. I seldom drink, but if I do drink, I'm more of a day drinker. And by day drinker, it is like consuming 1 or 2 drinks before 3 o'clock at night. All of these things not only impacted my sleep score, but also my readiness score. And readiness score is just based on different parameters of how well it is that you rested the day before, if you got way too much activity, if you have a crappy sleep score. All of these things can impact your readiness, which basically tells you whether you should go all out in activity for that day or whether or not you should maybe rest. And as I mentioned, with the Fitbit and the Body Bug, with the Oura Ring, it was no different. I was highly motivated by the numbers. I found myself checking the app quite frequently throughout the day to see how many steps I got in, to see whether I was close to achieving my activity goals for the day. And through doing that, I felt like it helped to keep me in shape. That's not to say without the ring, I would just sit on my butt all day and do nothing, but it motivated me to be a little bit more active than I might normally be. And it's with these scores too that I was super motivated to do what I could to get better scores. As I mentioned, my restfulness under my sleep score was super low, so I was trying to troubleshoot any way possible to bring that score up so that I could have a better score. One cool thing I learned about was my heart rate variability, HRV, was exceptionally well. HRV is essentially the variability between your heartbeats. It's a slight fluctuation that can indicate whether you are healthy or whether or not at your current state you might have some underlying health issues or health issues could arise in the future. My HRV averaged around 80, which is pretty good. It's not like that score means I'm an Olympic athlete, but overall I found compared to friends, my score, my HRV was better than theirs. I attribute that to I've designed my life to be as low stress as possible. I would like to believe that that may be one of the main reasons why my HRV was so well. And then going back to ovulation, through wearing the Oura Ring consistently for a year, I discovered that yes, I am ovulating. Not only that, but I am ovulating around day 15 to 17, which is pretty normal. I found that I ovulated between day 15 and 17 of my cycle. So for that, I am very grateful for the Oura Ring because, as I said, I had tried all kinds of thermometers in the past and I couldn't get accurate readings for my temperature to help me understand whether or not I was ovulating at all and then what days I was ovulating. So these are the things I didn't like about the Oura Ring. The first thing is that after your first trial period of using your Oura Ring, where all of the app features, where you're learning all of your data on your health is free, you have to pay $5.99 per month. And for two people with all the other subscription fees that we have nowadays, I became over it real quick, having to pay $12 per month for both of us to have access to this data after we had already spent how much money to buy an Oura Ring? So one of the other things that could have been a lot worse, and I'm grateful that it wasn't, but it's still something to be a little weary of, is that our charging cord for one of our rings ended up overheating and burnt. It was at that end where it plugs into the ring charging dock that it overheated. I'm grateful that we were charging it on our kitchen countertop because, you know, sometimes we do charge things next to our bed where maybe if our Oura Ring would have been there, it could have caused a fire. And if we weren't home, our whole house could have burnt down. So we actually reached out to Oura about it so that they could replace it, and we just wanted to let them know. And they said that this has happened before and that they recommend like a Belkin charger or an Apple charger to your charging cord into, and that shouldn't happen with those charging blocks. The final thing that really irritated me is after a while, I started to really become dependent on the Oura Ring, the app, to tell me how I felt. So what I mean by that is I would get up in the morning, my husband and I would turn to each other and be like, well, how'd you sleep? And more often than not, I would say, oh, I don't know, let me check my Oura Ring. Are you kidding me? Like, I ought to innately know, be able to feel into myself and know how I slept. I don't necessarily really need that ring or that app to tell me how I felt, right? I got to a place where I became dependent on the ring, on the app, to tell me how I felt, to tell me if I'm being active enough, to tell me if I feel ready enough to start the day. It's my belief that when you get to that level with something, you might need to take a step back and reconsider your dependence on it, because I feel at the end of the day, the one place you need to turn to understand how it is that you're feeling is you need to feel into yourself. You need to be asking yourself these questions. Like, if you need to outsource your ability to understand how you're doing to these wearables, you ought to know, you ought to be able to feel how you're doing and not have to turn to a wearable to understand yourself. That being said, what I do like about it was I was able to understand myself. I know that sounds very contradictory, but just hear me out. So like with your HRV, my understanding is like the best way for the average person to be able to understand their HRV is through things like wearables. And so by using the Oura Ring, I was able to understand my HRV and get a snapshot at how my health really was. So I got a better understanding of overall how I'm doing. So for a year snapshot, I came to the understanding that, yeah, I'm doing pretty well. But do I need to keep relying on this to tell me how well I am doing? Do I need to continue relying on this to motivate myself to work out, to motivate myself to make healthier decisions? Or do I just need to dig deep and motivate myself? So overall, as I said, it was great to wear the Oura Ring to get a snapshot for a year of how my health was, whether or not I was ovulating, to see my HRV. But in the long run, I didn't care for my dependency on checking the Oura Ring to understand how I was doing, instead of just checking in with myself to be able to understand on a much deeper personal level of how I was doing. So I would recommend this to people if you're looking to get a better understanding of how your health is. But I also say that with the disclaimer of like, hey, wear it temporarily, get an idea for how you are, and then do what you can to bring up your numbers if necessary, and then give it a boost. That's my opinions on the Oura Ring. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and share it with a friend, like it, subscribe to my channel, comment below if you've been wearing an Oura Ring or what you think of my opinion on the Oura Ring. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching. Peace.